Sometimes, life hits you so hard that even breathing feels like a chore. For Emily Dawson, every day had become a battle she didn't think she could win anymore. It was a freezing December night in the small town of Willow Creek. Snowflakes brushed against the cracked window of her tiny apartment, a place that once felt like home, but now just reminded her of everything she'd lost. Inside, Emily sat on the edge of her worn-out bed, a stack of unpaid bills staring back at her like ghosts of her past mistakes. The radiator hissed weakly in the corner, unable to chase away the cold. Her hands trembled as she rubbed them together for warmth, her eyes red and tired. She whispered under her breath, voice breaking, "I can't do this anymore. I just can't." Her 7-year-old daughter, Lily, lay fast asleep under a thin blanket, clutching a small stuffed rabbit that had once been white but was now gray from years of love. Emily looked at her, tears welling up. She used to be full of dreams, an artist, a mother who believed she could paint her way out of struggle. But one bad thing after another had knocked her down. First her husband walking out, then losing her art gallery job, and now, even the diner had let her go. She reached for the final notice on her rent, due in 3 days. The landlord's message was clear: no payment, no apartment. Emily sighed deeply, her voice trembling as she spoke to the silence. Maybe we'd be better off somewhere else. A new town. A new start. But even as she said it, she knew she couldn't afford the gas, let alone a bus ticket. She stood up and walked to the window, watching her reflection blur in the frost. Outside, Christmas lights glowed from other apartments, families laughing, children playing, reminders of the joy she no longer felt part of. Emily pressed her hand against the glass and whispered, "How do you keep believing when nothing ever changes?" She sank to her knees beside her daughter's bed, silently praying, not for money, not for success, but just for one sign that life hadn't forgotten about her. The clock ticked past midnight. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the heater and Lily's soft breathing. For a long moment, Emily stared at the ceiling, eyes wide open, tears silently falling. And in that quiet, something inside her broke. She was this close to giving up completely, to packing whatever little they had and walking away from everything. But little did she know. Life was about to surprise her in a way she could have never imagined. Because sometimes, miracles don't arrive wrapped in light. They show up in the form of a stranger with a warm smile, a cup of coffee, and a question that can change everything. But who was this stranger? And what would he bring into Emily's broken world? Stay with me because Emily's life is about to take a turn she never saw coming. The next morning, the world outside was covered in white. Snow blanketed every rooftop, every street corner, as if life had pressed a reset button. But for Emily, nothing felt new. The same worries, the same emptiness, just colder. She pulled on her worn coat and old boots, the soles nearly split open. Lily was still asleep, so Emily slipped out quietly, hoping a walk might clear her mind before her daughter woke. As she stepped into the still morning, her breath turned to mist in the air. She crossed the park near her apartment, the one she used to take Lily to on better days. Now, the swings creaked softly in the wind. The benches were dusted with snow, untouched. She sat down on one, clutching her hands together, staring into nothing. The silence felt heavy. She thought of every mistake, every door that had closed, and the way the world just kept moving without her. And then, a voice. Warm, calm, gentle. "Cold morning, Emily blinked and turned. A man stood a few feet away, holding a leash attached to a golden retriever wagging its tail. He had that kind of smile that made people feel safe, soft around the eyes, genuine. "Sorry," he said with a chuckle, brushing snow off the bench beside her. "Mind if we sit here?" Emily hesitated but nodded. The dog immediately plopped down at her feet, looking up with those big brown eyes. She couldn't help but smile for the first time in days. "He likes you," the man said. "I'm Michael. And this goofball's name is Buddy." Emily gave a polite nod. "I'm Emily," she said quietly. For a while, they just sat there in silence, strangers sharing the same cold air. Then, Michael offered her a paper cup. Steam curled from it. The smell hit her, rich and comforting. You look like you could use this more than I can, he said kindly. Emily hesitated, glancing at the cup. She wanted to say no, pride still whispering that she didn't need charity, but her hands were freezing, and it had been days since she'd had real coffee. She took it, her voice soft. Thank you. I didn't realize how cold I was. They talked about small things at first. The weather. The town. Buddy's obsession with chasing squirrels. And though Emily barely spoke about herself, something about Michael's calm presence made her feel seen. He didn't push. He didn't pity her. He just listened, the way people do when they actually care. But when Michael asked, "So, what do you do?" Emily froze. She glanced down at her gloves, frayed at the tips. After a pause, she whispered, "I used to be an artist, now I'm just trying to get by." Michael tilted his head, studying her face, not with judgment, but with quiet understanding. "Used to be?" he asked gently. Emily forced a weak smile. "Yeah, life had other plans." The conversation faded into silence again. After a while, Emily stood up. "I should probably head back," she said, clutching the coffee cup. Michael smiled. "Of course. But hey." He reached into his coat and handed her a napkin with something scribbled on it. "If you ever want to talk, or just need a friend, I volunteer at the Willow Creek Community Center. I'm there most days." Emily nodded politely, tucking the napkin into her pocket, not really planning to use it. She thanked him, waved goodbye to Buddy, and walked away. But as she crossed the street, something inside her felt lighter. It wasn't much, just a stranger's kindness, a cup of coffee, and a smile, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like hope. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Emily found herself staring at the napkin again. The handwriting neat, simple, friendly. Michael Turner, Willow Creek Community Center. She smiled faintly, whispering, maybe tomorrow will be different. But Emily didn't know, that same stranger she met in the park was about to reappear in her life in the most unexpected way. And what he offered next would change everything. Stay with me. Because, soon, Emily discovers an opportunity that could turn her entire life around. A few days passed since that cold morning in the park. Emily went about her days trying to hold everything together, scraping by on what little savings she had left. She spent her mornings searching for work, her afternoons sketching quietly while Lily colored beside her at the kitchen table. But no matter how many doors she knocked on, no one was hiring. The bills didn't care. The landlord didn't care. And Emily, she was starting to lose the little hope that strangers' kindness had sparked. Then, one snowy afternoon, as she walked home from the grocery store, arms full of discounted groceries, fate decided to step in once again. She stopped in front of the local art supply store, the one she used to visit all the time when she still believed in her dreams. Inside, she noticed a familiar figure browsing through a shelf of paintbrushes. It was Michael. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Emily. Hey, what are the odds?" She smiled shyly. "Small town," she said with a small laugh. They chatted for a bit, mostly about Buddy, his dog who apparently had developed a habit of stealing socks now. But then, Michael's eyes landed on the worn sketchbook sticking out of Emily's bag. "You still draw?" he asked, curiosity in his voice. Emily hesitated. "Sometimes. Just for me." Michael smiled. "Can I see?" Emily froze. No one had asked to see her art in years. But something about his tone, gentle, not pushy, made her open the cover. She turned a few pages, showing him her pencil sketches, portraits of Lily, streets from their neighborhood, and scenes of mothers and children holding hands. Each line carried pain, love, and quiet strength. Michael stared, visibly moved. "Emily, these are incredible." She laughed nervously. "They're just sketches. Nothing special." "No," he said firmly, shaking his head. "They are special. You capture something real. Emotion. Life." Emily blushed, trying to hide her face. "That part of me is long gone, Michael." But Michael wasn't convinced. He studied her for a moment and then said, almost casually, "You know, the community center. We run an art program for kids. The instructor just left last week. We've been searching for someone who could take over. Someone who loves art and understands struggle." Emily blinked, stunned. Are you saying you want me to teach? Michael smiled. Why not you? You've got the heart, the talent, and I can tell you've got stories these kids need to hear. She shook her head, overwhelmed. Michael, I haven't taught anyone before. And honestly, I can barely teach myself how to keep going these days. Michael took a gentle step closer, lowering his voice. Emily, listen. I've met a lot of people in my life. But the way you talk about your daughter, the way you draw, it's clear you haven't lost your gift. You've just forgotten how much it's worth. His words lingered in the air like a soft echo. Emily didn't know what to say. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't know, Michael. What if I fail again? He smiled kindly. Then fail forward. But at least try. Sometimes the thing we think will save others ends up saving us too. For a long moment, Emily just stood there, holding that thought, her heart pounding, a spark flickering inside her chest for the first time in years. Finally, she nodded slowly. I'll think about it. Michael grinned. That's all I ask. As she left the store, snowflakes began to fall again, light, gentle, like hope descending quietly over her weary soul. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Michael's words echoing in her mind. Sometimes, miracles come disguised as second chances. The next morning, she made a decision. She pulled out her sketchbook, looked at Lily still asleep, and whispered, Maybe this is it, sweetheart. Maybe this is where our story changes. But could Emily really step back into the world she'd given up on? Could she teach others when she still felt so broken inside? Emily will soon take the leap, and what happens next will test her courage, her faith, and her heart in ways she never expected. The following week, Emily found herself standing outside the Willow Creek Community Center, her heart racing. The red brick building stood quietly against the snow-covered street. Through the frosted windows, she could see children laughing, running around with paper and crayons in hand. It felt foreign, joy, laughter. But something inside her whispered, Walk in. She took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The smell of paint and hot cocoa filled the air. At the reception desk, she saw Michael, smiling warmly as if he'd been waiting all along. You came, he said. Emily smiled nervously, holding her sketchbook close to her chest. I almost didn't, she admitted. But my daughter said I should at least try. Michael nodded. Smart kid. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her through the center, walls lined with colorful paintings, drawings, and photos from past workshops. He stopped in a small classroom filled with easels, brushes, and half-finished art projects from children. This could be your space, he said softly, if you want it. Emily stood silently, running her hand along a paint-splattered table. It felt like touching a piece of her past, the part she'd buried under pain and disappointment. Finally, she nodded. Okay, she said, her voice trembling. I'll do it. The first few days were rough. Emily stumbled over her words, unsure how to command a room full of energetic children. Her hands shook when she picked up the chalk. But slowly, something began to change. A shy little girl named Sophie tugged on her sleeve one afternoon and said, Miss Emily, I drew this because I feel sad sometimes, like you do. Emily knelt beside her, looking at the drawing. A small house under rain, with a sun trying to break through the clouds. She smiled softly. That's beautiful, Sophie. You know, even rainy days help flowers grow. And for the first time, she realized she wasn't just teaching art. She was helping these kids feel. Each day, she brought a bit more of herself into the class. She laughed. She encouraged. She painted alongside them. By the second week, even Lily joined the sessions, her laughter echoing through the room as she proudly showed her mom her paintings. The sight of her daughter smiling again, it was like watching sunlight return after a long, endless winter. As weeks turned into months, the transformation was undeniable. Emily's confidence returned. She began sketching again at night, not for money, not for survival, but for joy. The community started to notice too. Parents thanked her. The kids adored her. And through it all, Michael quietly cheered her on, helping with supplies, encouraging her when she doubted herself. One evening, after class ended, Michael stood at the door, watching Emily clean paintbrushes while Lily helped pack crayons into boxes. He smiled softly and said, "You know, I don't think you realize how much you've changed this place." Emily looked up, smiling shyly. "Me? I think this place changed me." Michael nodded, his eyes thoughtful. Maybe it was meant to. They both shared a quiet smile, one filled with gratitude and something unspoken. Later that night, as Emily walked home with Lily, snowflakes fell again, glistening under the streetlights. She looked up at the sky, whispered softly, "Thank you, whoever's listening." But what Emily didn't know, Michael was carrying a story of his own. And soon, she'd learn the truth about why he'd built that community center. And how her arrival had brought healing into his life too. It had been 3 months since Emily started teaching at the community center. The room that once felt foreign now felt like home, full of laughter, color, and second chances. Her students adored her. Parents often stayed after class just to thank her for helping their children open up again. And every evening, when the hall emptied and the lights dimmed, Emily often found herself standing by the windows, smiling, proud, and quietly amazed by how far she'd come. But one evening, as she was cleaning up after class, she noticed Michael sitting alone in the art room. He was holding a photo frame, one she hadn't seen before. She hesitated, then walked over. "Long day?" she asked gently. Michael looked up, smiling softly. "Yeah, something like that." He turned the photo toward her. It was of a woman, smiling brightly, covered in paint, just like Emily after a long day of teaching. "She was beautiful," Emily said quietly. Michael nodded, eyes glistening. "Her name was Claire. My wife. She was an artist, just like you." Emily froze, her heart softening. Michael continued, voice trembling slightly. "We opened this center together, years ago. She believed art could heal people, that kids needed a safe space to feel seen, to be heard." He took a shaky breath. "But when she got sick, everything stopped. After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to come here anymore. It just hurt too much." Emily sat down beside him, speechless. He looked at her, smiling faintly. "Then one morning I met a woman in the park. She looked like she'd lost everything, except her heart. Something about her reminded me of Claire. And suddenly, I felt this pull to keep going." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "Michael, I didn't know." He smiled through his pain. "You weren't supposed to. You were just supposed to be you. The center came alive again because of you. The kids have light again because of you. You brought back what I thought I'd buried with her." Emily wiped her tears, voice trembling. "All this time, I thought you were the one helping me." Michael chuckled softly. "Maybe we were both saving each other." For a long moment, they sat in silence, two souls, both once broken, now quietly healing side by side. As they looked around the art room, the walls filled with color, laughter frozen in every stroke, Emily finally understood. Her miracle wasn't a moment. It wasn't luck. It was this, the connection, the kindness, the healing that comes from helping others find their light. But Emily's journey wasn't over yet, because what came next would show her just how much her life had truly changed, and how one small act of faith could ripple through an entire community. Spring arrived, melting away the last traces of winter, and with it came a day Emily would never forget. The Willow Creek Community Center was buzzing with excitement. Colorful balloons lined the hallway. Paintings and drawings covered every wall, bright, joyful, full of meaning. It was the first annual student art exhibition, and for the first time in years, Emily wasn't the one standing in the shadows. She was at the center of it all, smiling, proud, and radiant. Children ran up to her, tugging her hands, showing off their framed artwork. "Miss Emily, look, they hung mine next to yours." She laughed, bending down to hug them. "You earned it, kiddo." Parents stopped to thank her, some with tears in their eyes. One mother whispered, "My son hasn't spoken much since his dad left, but because of your class, he painted again." "Thank you." Emily smiled, her eyes glistening. He just needed someone to remind him that his voice still matters. Across the room, Michael watched quietly, pride shining in his eyes. When Emily finally walked over, he handed her a small envelope. "Open it," he said. Inside was a letter from the Town Arts Council. They were offering her a grant to expand the children's art program and to host workshops for single mothers in the community. Emily covered her mouth, tears spilling over. "Michael, this is exactly what you deserve," he finished with a smile. "Claire would have loved this. And I think she's smiling right now." Emily hugged him tightly, whispering, "You were my miracle, Michael." He smiled softly. "No, Emily. You were mine." That evening, as the exhibition came to an end, Emily and Lily walked home under a gentle snowfall, the kind that sparkled under the streetlights. Lily reached up, holding her mother's hand. "Mommy, are you happy now?" Emily smiled, looking down at her daughter. "Yeah, baby. I think I finally am." She looked up at the night sky, whispering softly, "When you're about to give up, life sometimes whispers, 'Hold on. Your miracle is closer than you think.'" Because miracles don't always arrive with fanfare or magic. Sometimes, they walk into your life quietly, with a cup of coffee, a kind smile, and a reason to hope again. And that's how Emily Dawson found hers. Not in escaping her pain, but in turning it into something that healed others. And if you're watching this, wondering if your miracle will ever come, don't give up. Because maybe, just maybe, you're someone else's miracle too. When Emily was at her lowest, life sent her a miracle, not through money or luck, but through kindness. Because miracles don't always show up in shining lights. Sometimes, they walk in as ordinary people with extraordinary hearts. So if you're going through a storm right now, hold on. Your miracle might already be on its way. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. Because you never know, you might just be the miracle they've been waiting for. And remember, we're not just telling stories. We're changing lives.